The Fox Boy by Nankichi Nimi. 7 boys were walking along a country road in the moonlight. Some were quite young, having started school only a year or so before, and the others were somewhat older. They were on their way to the night festival of a shrine in the nearby town, which was about a mile away from their village. The moon was high in the sky, and the boys' shadows on the ground were very short. The boys were amused. How big-headed and short-legged their shadows were. They laughed. Some of them tried to change the shape of their shadows by running a few steps. On a moonlit night, children are likely to imagine all sorts of very strange and fantastic things. The road ascended a little where it had been cut through a small hill. When they reached the summit, the boys could hear the faint notes of a festival flute. The notes wafted towards them on the soft breeze of the spring night. At the sound, their steps became faster, and one small boy began to drop behind. "Hurry, Bunroku, hurry!" they called to him. The boy called Bunroku was doing his best to catch up with the others. Even in the moonlight, you could tell that he was a fair and thin little boy with enormous eyes. "I'm coming as fast as I can," he called back in a whining voice. "But these clogs, they're mother's, not mine." And indeed his bony legs did end in a large pair of grown-up clogs. On reaching town, they first went to a clog shop on the main street. Bunroku's mother had asked them to buy him a new pair. Yoshinori, the oldest of the boys, spoke to the shopkeeper's wife, putting his hand on Bunroku's shoulder. "Granny, this is the son of Seiroku, the barrel maker. He needs a pair of clogs that fit him. His mother said she'd pay you later." The other boys pushed Bunroku to the front, so the shopkeeper's wife could see him. The small son of the barrel maker stood straight and still, blinking his big eyes now and then. Laughing, the woman took out several pairs of clogs that she thought would fit the boy. As if he was the boy's father, Yoshinori squatted down and, one after the other, held the clogs up against Bunroku's feet. Bunroku stayed motionless and said nothing. Being the barrel maker's only child, he was spoilt and used to having things done for him. One pair of clogs was chosen, and just as Bunroku was slipping his feet into the thongs, a very old woman with a bent back came into the shop. Noticing the boy and his new pair of clogs, she murmured, as though half to the boys and half to herself, "Dear, dear, I don't know whose child this is, but if you wear a new pair of clogs for the first time at night, you're sure to be bewitched by a fox." For a moment, everyone was very quiet, and the boys simply stared at the old woman. Then Yoshinori shouted, "No, that's not so. That's just a superstition," cried another. The boys nodded in agreement, and yet an expression of uneasiness remained on their faces. "Well then," said the shopkeeper's wife, "just leave it to me. I'll take away the spell for you." She made the motions of striking a match and holding it briefly under the bottom of each of Bunroku's new clogs. This would have made marks on the clogs and kept them from being brand new. "Now the spell is gone. Everything's all right. No fox or badger can bewitch you." The boys left the shop and went on their way to the shrine, where an outdoor stage had been set up. A number of dancers were performing the dance of celestial beings. After a while, they had seen enough of the dancing and drifted off into the darker corners of the shrine precincts to watch the firecrackers that were being set off. Then a puppet show began on a lantern-lit float. The boys squeezed their way through the crowd and stood at the very front, looking up at the little balcony-like stage on the float. A puppet was dancing. The boys watched it. The puppet looked neither like an adult nor like a child, and its black eyes shone so brightly that it was hard to believe it was not a real human being. From time to time, the puppet blinked its eyes. The boys knew, of course, that it was the puppeteer standing behind the puppet who was making its eyes blink, but still they felt a little scared. Then, all of a sudden, the puppet opened its mouth, stuck out a long tongue, and before the boys could give screams of surprise, snapped its mouth shut again. In a flashing instant, the boys had seen that the inside of the puppet's mouth glowed red. If it had been daytime, they would have been moved to laughter, but none of them laughed now. They kept remembering Bunroku's new clogs, and how the old woman had said, "If you wear new clogs at night, a fox will bewitch you." They knew they had stayed at the festival too long. The sound of firecrackers had died down, and the crowd was thinning out. They still had a long way home over the hill and through the deserted fields. As they started for home, their earlier excitement disappeared, and the moonlight no longer cheered them. They walked along in silence, as though each of them was busy looking into some inner world of his own. When they reached the top of the hill, one of the boys cupped a hand to his mouth and whispered into the ear of the boy next to him. Then the second boy whispered to a third, and the whispering went from one boy to the next until everyone except Bunroku had heard the secret. This is what they were whispering. The shopkeeper's wife didn't take away the spell after all. She only pretended to strike a match. The boys walked along, scarcely daring to breathe and not saying a word. They were all thinking the same thing. What exactly does it mean to be bewitched by a fox? Would the fox get inside of Bunroku? Or would Bunroku's mind turn into the fox's mind, while his outside appearance remained the same? In that case, what if the fox had already taken possession of Bunroku? But how could they tell if Bunroku wouldn't say a word? The road was descending now, and the boys were walking faster, all thinking about Bunroku and the fox. The road went past a small pond, with several plum trees around it. Just as they passed the pond, there was a faint coughing sound. In the silence, they heard it very clearly. They looked suspiciously at each other. Everything was quiet, and they heard the coughing again. It had come from Bunroku. The more they thought about it, the more they came to believe it hadn't been a cough at all. Surely it had sounded more like a fox's yelp. Ahem! There, Bunroku had done it again. This time there was no doubt about it. There was surely a fox among them. Frightened, they hurried on faster. Bunroku's house was in a grove of tangerine trees, in a little valley away from all the other houses. To get to it, you took a narrow path that branched off the main road just beside the water wheel. Usually, the boys would accompany Bunroku to his gate. His mother often gave the boys tangerines and sweets, asking them to look after her little son. Now the group had reached the water wheel. They could see how the path to Bunroku's house descended into some tall grass and disappeared. None of them dared move. It seemed as though they had quite forgotten that they usually took Bunroku home, but they hadn't forgotten at all. They were afraid. At last, Bunroku started down the path by himself, but he kept looking back, hoping that Yoshinori at least would come with him. But even Yoshinori made no move. Alone, Bunroku followed the path down into the moonlit valley. Now that he was almost home, he no longer minded that the older boys hadn't come with him, as they had always done before. Bunroku understood what had happened. He knew what the other boys had been whispering about, and how they had felt when he coughed. Bunroku recalled how kind and helpful everyone had been on the way to the festival. They think a fox has bewitched me, he thought, and that's why they don't like me anymore. His feelings were hurt. Even Yoshinori, who was much older and always very kind to Bunroku, had acted strangely. He had now reached the back gate to his house, just where the hedge ended. As he opened a little wooden wicket, he caught sight of his shadow on the ground. Then a suspicion crossed his mind. Maybe a fox has bewitched me. If that's so, what will Mother and Father do with me? His father had gone to a meeting of barrel makers and would be coming home late. So Bunroku and his mother decided to go to bed without waiting for him. After they were in bed, his mother said, "Well, tell me all about the festival." She always wanted to know everything that Bunroku did. Bunroku was not good at talking. He spoke haltingly, revealing things bit by bit. But his mother always listened intently and seemed very pleased by his accounts. One of the celestial dancers, she was just old Taneko of the bathhouse, Bunroku said. "Is that so?" His mother laughed heartily. "And who were the others? Could you tell?" Bunroku opened his big eyes wide, as though trying to remember. But his next remark had nothing to do with the festival. "Mother, is it true that a fox will bewitch you if you wear new clogs for the first time at night?" His mother, taken by surprise, looked puzzled for a moment. At first she couldn't understand what Bunroku was talking about, but she soon guessed what must have happened. "Who said so?" she asked. Bunroku only repeated his question earnestly once more. "Is it really true?" "No, of course not. It was only in days long, long ago that people believed such things. Then it's a lie." "Yes, it's a lie." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." For a few moments, Bunroku was silent. Finally, he asked, "But if a fox did bewitch me, and I turned into a fox myself, what would you do?" His mother gave a peal of laughter. "Answer me! Answer me, Mother!" Half embarrassed. He reached out and shook his mother. "Well, well," said his mother, looking thoughtful. "If you became a fox, we couldn't keep you in the house, of course." Bunroku looked desolate as he listened to his mother's words. "Then where would I go?" he asked. "To Mount Karasun, maybe," answered his mother. "They say foxes still live there." "But what would you and Father do then?" His mother put a very serious look on her face, the way grown-ups often do when they're teasing small children. "We'd talk the matter over, and probably we'd say, 'Now that our beloved Bunroku has become a fox, we have no more joy in this world, so let's quit being humans and become foxes too.' You and Father would become foxes too?" "Yes, your father and I would buy new clogs and wear them tomorrow night, and that way we'd be turned into foxes. Then all three of us could go together to Mount Karasun." Bunroku's eyes became bigger and bigger. "Is that in the west, where the tall mountains are? Wouldn't there be hunters?" "You mean hunters with guns? Of course, because nobody lives there and there are many animals. If the hunters shot at us, what would we do then? We'd hide in a deep cave and huddle in a corner. Then the hunters wouldn't see us. But when the snows came, we wouldn't have enough food, and would have to go out for food. And then the hunters' dogs would find us. Then we'd run together for dear life. You and Father would be all right, because you're grown and can run fast. But I'm only a child fox, and I'd be left behind. We'd take you by both paws and pull you along. With the dogs right behind us." His mother fell silent, and when she next spoke, the teasing tone was gone from her voice. "Well, then I'd limp along slowly behind you." "Why?" the boy asked. "Because that way it'd be me the dogs caught. That'd give you and Father time to run away to safety." Bunroku was astounded. He stared at his mother round-eyed. "No, Mother, no!" he shouted. Then we'd be without you. But there's no other way, dear, his mother said quietly. You won't! You won't! You won't! Bunroku shouted, throwing himself about until he kicked his pillow off the bed. Then he clung to his mother for a moment, tears falling from his big eyes. The mother felt tears in her eyes too, and furtively wiped them away with the sleeve of her nightdress. Reaching for the little pillow, she slipped it gently under Bunroku's head.